unto him, we also go with thee. The Bible says they went forth and entered into a ship immediately, and that night they caught nothing. Now let me go on and transition into my first point, because I believe that once again, John starts by saying after these things is significant because Jesus has told them to go make disciples. He has told them go and preach my gospel to them that might believe. And instead of them doing what God told them to do, they decided to go fishing. Now, why is it significant that they decided to go fishing? Because Peter, by trade, was a fisherman. And my first point that I want to tell us today, ITOP, is you got to be careful going back and returning to the familiar. See, it's significant that Christ told them what to do, and yet instead of moving forward based on their purpose, instead of moving forward based on their promise, they decided to do what they knew how to do. Because see, preaching this gospel is undangered territory. It's uncharted territory. Preaching this gospel to people that might believe is out of our comfort zone. And instead of them doing what God told them to do, they decided to do what they knew how to do. They decide to go fishing. But the Bible says that they decide to go fishing, and it says they toiled all night and they caught nothing. My second point is that you got to understand there is purpose in your failure. Because what we fail to realize, people of God, is that the reason that I believe God allowed them to be unsuccessful in their fishing excursion is simply because had they been successful that day, guess what they would have done the next day? If they had been successful for that whole week, guess what they would have been doing next month? Listen, the reason that God has allowed you to experience the difficulties that you've experienced and the disappointment that you've experienced is simply because he was trying to redirect you. Because where you were and the way you were headed is not what was God's will for your life. The things that you were putting your hands to is not what God called you to do. The things that you were trying to be is not who God says I created you to be. And instead of me allowing you to keep experiencing success, I'm going to allow you to fail. Dang, ain't no fish in there. Cast the net back on the left side. Pull it back up. Still ain't no fish in there. Cast the net 2 hours later on the left side. Pull it back up, and there's still no fish. Listen, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, the same way, over and over again, but expecting different results. But listen, it may have been that in the past, the left side is what worked. So they continue to cast their net on the left side. And then here comes this dude that says, cast it on the right side. Now listen, it blessed me because even though the disciples were out of line, even though the disciples were not doing what he had told them to do, even though the disciples were being disobedient, the God that we serve still blesses us and gives us favor even when we're standing in our own way. Because he could have said, y'all get your behinds off of the sea and come up here and do what I told you to do. But instead, God in Jesus is so merciful that he says, I know you've been toiling all night. I know you're at your breaking point. Even though you've been disobedient and you really deserve to be unproductive, but instead of me allowing you to experience failure, I'm just going to tell you, switch it. And that's a word for somebody today, because you've been doing the same thing, the same way, expecting a different result. But God sent me by here today to say, switch it.